And I just did more than the Packers' entire offense for 3 quarters. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. At least I can catch a pen because receivers can't catch the freaking ball. Grossi. And today, we are going to be talking about the Green Bay Packers loss to the Philadelphia Eagles with a score of 10-7. Yep, we started Week 10 with a 10-7 game on Thursday Night Football between the Broncos and the Raiders, and we end one on Monday Night Football between the Eagles and the Packers. It's great. So many great offensive performances. This game, very frustrating. And heading into this week, there was a lot of talk about which Packers team we were going to see on Monday. And even when I was doing predictions, it was almost impossible to try and predict this game because both of these teams have been inconsistent throughout the season. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they obviously had their bye week last week, but before then, they had their 2 best offensive games of the entire year. Ask any single Eagles fan, and they will tell you how much they hate their offensive coordinator in Patullo. And besides those past 2 games where Jalen Hurts did well, Saquon Barkley was able to really get things going against the Giants and had his best day on the ground this season. Before that, they have been wildly inconsistent. And for the Packers, besides the first 2 weeks of the season, the Packers have been very hot and cold as well. They lost to the Cleveland Browns in Week 3. They tied the Cowboys and scored 40 freaking points in Week 4. And since then, there have been games where the offense shows up for a little bit, then they decide not to. The defense forgets how to run defense against the Panthers. They lose last week. And so it really was a complete and total coin flip as to which teams were going to show up on Monday Night Football. And the answer? Neither offense did, but both defenses played really damn well. And for the Packers, they didn't allow a single point until the 3rd quarter when they allowed their first field goal. Devontae Smith wound up getting a touchdown in the 4th quarter. The Packers would eventually answer back with a touchdown of their own as Josh Jacobs ran one in. And the frustrating thing is that the defense put together a phenomenal performance. We were worried about this run defense heading into this game, considering they allowed Rico Dowdle to run all over them last week. Here, we didn't see that. Saquon Barkley rushed for 60 yards and had 2.7 yards per carry. That's really damn good. And the fact that they were able to hold the defending Super Bowl champs to 10 points, even though they are having their offensive struggles this year, that should be a very winnable game. And I'm not upset about the fact that they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, I'm upset as a Packers fan. I don't want to see them lose any game. But the fact that they could have won this game if the offense did, I don't know, anything for the first 3 quarters. And even after all that, the Packers were in a position to at least tie this football game in the 4th quarter, multiple times actually. And the fact that they could not get it done, that is where my frustration is right now. And taking a look at this Packers offense, let's talk about it. Jordan Love went 20 for 36 tonight, 176 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, had a very, very costly fumble at Philadelphia's 27-yard line, and this was very similar to what we saw last week against the Panthers. The Packers were finally driving, and unfortunately, Savion Williams, he had a wide receiver screen, ran into his own blocker, and eventually fumbled that football, which gave the Panthers the ball and ended that potential scoring drive. The same thing happened here, in which Jordan Love was running for his life, tried to do a little bit too much and at least get rid of the ball. The ball comes out, it's a fumble, the Eagles recover, and that ends that potential scoring drive. And at the bare minimum, the Packers should be walking away with at least a field goal because, again, they're at Philadelphia's 27. So that fumble was insanely costly. On top of that, Jordan Love was sacked 3 times tonight. Jalen Hurts didn't get sacked a single time. And while they were able to get some QB pressures on defense, the problem here with the Packers now for multiple weeks is their offensive line is not only beat up, they can't block. They're having a tough time in run blocking. They're having a tough time in pass protection. And ultimately, that is one of the major issues as to why this offense can't get things going. And there are other things, and trust me, we're going to talk about play calling. We're going to talk about drops. We'll talk about a bunch of things. But one of the consistent problems the Packers have had this season is blocking. And while they did address this in free agency by bringing in a guy like Aaron Banks, that signing has not done very well, just like that Nate Hobbs signing hasn't done well for that defense. And throw on top of that Elton Jenkins got carted off tonight, and when Matt LaFleur was asked about it, he said it does not look good. The Packers can't afford to lose any more blockers, considering they're already having a tough time as it is. And taking a look at the run game, Josh Jacobs, they ran a ton with him tonight. 21 carries for 74 yards. He was averaging 3.5 yards per carry, had a touchdown, also caught 5 passes for 33 yards, had a fumble at the very end of that game, and don't worry, we will talk about that 4th and 1 run play, but we're not there just yet. But Josh Jacobs had a pretty solid night on the ground. You would like that average to be a little bit higher, but again, the defense, they held Saquon Barkley to a 2.7 average. So the defense did its job, and while they were running a ton with Josh Jacobs, it seemed like they were running a little too much tonight, which I know we complain about the Packers not being able to run the ball, then they run the ball too much. There is a happy medium, and the Packers just couldn't find it tonight. Taking a look at our leading receivers, Watson, 2 catches for 45 yards, Dontavian Wicks, 4 catches for 38 yards, and the Packers desperately missed Tucker Kraft tonight, not only in the blocking game, but also just being a great third down target. Of course, Matthew Golden, the rookie, also did not play. I don't know how much he would have gotten the ball, considering they haven't really given it to him a lot this season. And of course, Jaden Reed is still not back from his injury. And it just seemed like when the Packers needed a play, they could not get one from one of their receivers. Bo Melton was targeted a bunch of times in this game and had a crucial 4th down drop that could have continued that drive. And for Bo Melton, who we converted to a corner in the offseason, I don't even really think he should be on the offense. And I like Bo Melton a whole lot, don't get me wrong. But if the Packers are using him as a corner, the guy's not going to be Travis Hunter. And it feels like when you need to get a first down, Bo Melton is probably not going to be the first choice just because he hasn't played a ton of offense this season. And so when we're talking about the offensive woes, they don't score a single touchdown to the 4th quarter. This is now the 2nd week in a row that this has happened. But the Packers defense, they stepped up. And while they didn't sack Jalen Hurts at all, they were able to get some pressure on him. Edgerrin Cooper had a great play on Jalen Hurts, punching the ball out, getting them their only turnover of the night. And overall, again, they played well enough for the Packers to win this football game. And at the very end of the 4th quarter, the Packers found themselves around their own 10-yard line with 2 timeouts and nearly 2 minutes left on the clock. And all they needed was a field goal. They started driving down the field. They get 9 yards on 3rd down. They hurry up to the line. And this is where it's inexcusable. They call a run play, an inside zone play on 4th and 1. They don't take the timeout. They run it out of the freaking shotgun. And I know, and we've talked about it over these past couple weeks, that there are a lot of people that are criticizing Matt LaFleur, especially for his play calling. And this, at the very end of the game, this was inexcusable. With the game on the line, even though the Packers would wind up getting the ball back because the Eagles decided to throw it long on 4th down, which was very confusing, but we'll get there. But Matt LaFleur, do something else, considering they're only averaging 3.5 yards per carry. On top of that, you already have offensive line woes, and Elton Jenkins is out. At the bare minimum, call a timeout, man. And even if you thought, hey, maybe it's Jordan Love calling this play, Love confirmed in the press conference that this was a Matt LaFleur play call. And what makes this even more infuriating is the Eagles knew it. You literally see the Eagles defender run over and say, hey, inside zone this way, based on the way that the Packers are lining up. And guess what? They were 100% correct. Not only did Josh Jacobs get blown up in the backfield, he fumbled the ball, and the Packers had a penalty as well to put the cherry on top of an absolute terrible play call, and ultimately, the Packers lost this game. So it was a mix of drops, bad blocking, poor play calling. They went 5 for 13 on 3rd down, and I want to be very clear too. We do have to give the Eagles a ton of credit. For example, they just traded for Jalen Phillips. He had a phenomenal game on that D-line for the Eagles, and without him, man, I don't know if the Eagles win this football game because he made a major impact. So you got to give credit to the Eagles defense because while their offense definitely struggled, both defenses played really damn well. At the end of the day, though, it just makes very little sense to have that play call running it out of shotgun, which drives me absolutely insane when we have blocking issues, when the run game is kind of working. Yeah, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put all your eggs in one basket there, especially on that play call. But there's another thing that's bothering me, I don't know about even more, but at least equally, and that's our special teams. And this is nothing about Dan Whelan. I love you. You could never do anything wrong. This is about our kicker. And you talked about McManus these past couple of weeks because when he was out, Haversick came in. He did very well. He set the franchise record for a long field goal. And this is where I have a problem. McManus was active once again, and there was 2 times in this game where they could have sent McManus out to kick a field goal. There was one time in the third quarter where they ended up on the Eagles' 41-yard line. That would be roughly a 58-yard attempt. Okay, that's a bit of a long one. But then in the fourth quarter, they're on the 40-yard line of the Eagles, and it's a 57-yard attempt. And they send out the punting unit both times. And again, I understand the strategy of Dan Whelan's playing well. Your defense is putting together a fantastic game. You're trusting them. And again, it makes sense because except for one drive, the Packers didn't allow a single touchdown. However, when you have a guy who's sitting on the bench in Haversick who can kick it from 60 yards plus, he's been successful. The fact that you don't send McManus out there, especially in the third quarter, when you could have tied the game, or even in the fourth quarter, when those 3 points would have made a huge difference, that's where I have a huge problem with this. Because if you don't trust McManus to hit these long field goals, then why are you activating Brandon McManus? It just doesn't make a lot of sense when you have an option right there. And this is not like where the Packers have been the past few years when they didn't have a kicker, and it's like, oh man, we have nobody who hit the broadside of a barn. You have a guy in Haversick who has proven that he can do it. And that's where Matt LaFleur, I think, is going to get a ton of criticism. Not only for that 4th and 1 play call, which that was a huge problem and that is inexcusable. And honestly, if the offense can't pick things up, yeah, that seat might start to get a little bit hotter. We talked about this last week in expectations for the Packers, and those skyrocketed after trading for Micah Parsons. So I understand the Packers fan base being incredibly frustrated with Matt LaFleur and his play calling. Don't get me wrong. I do think he's a little bit overhated because it just seems like every time there's a bad play, it's like, oh my God, fire him. And I don't think that that is necessarily the right way to go right now after week 10. However, there have been some constant mistakes this season and they're not improving. The one place they did improve this game is they only had 4 penalties, and so that is a good thing. The Eagles wound up having 7, so the Packers didn't shoot themselves in the foot when it came to penalties. But at the end of the day, man, they have to clean this offense up, especially when you are getting that kind of performance from the defense. Jeff Hafley called a really good game, and besides the 1 touchdown that they allowed to Devontae Smith, yeah, this was a very winnable football game, which makes this even more frustrating. I mean, hell, you look at the offense, they were averaging 4 yards per play. The Eagles, 4.9. So again, defense played really well. The offense let them down. They had multiple opportunities that ended in drops. They didn't go for field goals. They had a massive turnover, and ultimately, they lost this football game. And so what does that mean now for the Green Bay Packers? Well, they go from first place in the NFC North to third place, meaning that the Lions, and yes, the Chicago Bears are above them in the standings. They fall from the 2 seed in the NFC all the way down to the 7 seed. And let's just be very honest here. This season is going to be determined over this next month and a half. Because after next week, after the Giants game, they are going to start going through the NFC North gauntlet. They are going to face 3 divisional rivals in a row. And that is going to determine if they are going to make the playoffs. That is going to determine what kind of season they're going to have. And ultimately, the Packers have to do better on the offensive side of the ball. I'm really, really happy with how the defense played. And again, if this came down to the Packers just lost this game, I'd probably be feeling a little bit better because, again, it was a really close one. But it's those missed opportunities and it's that inconsistency that is just killing them every single week that offense is not showing up. You look at the run defense last week, they didn't show up, but overall, they held the Panthers to enough points where they could have won that game. The offense didn't get things going until the fourth quarter. That happened once again. And so now the Packers are 5-3-1. They're going to be taking on the Giants next week, who just fired their head coach. Dart is probably going to be out as he is in concussion protocol. So they're going to be going up against either Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson. This should be a get-right game because, like I said, the margin for error is starting to get smaller and smaller. And as you're getting deeper into November and you're going to be playing all these divisional games, yeah, the Packers are going to need to figure it out quickly. A very disappointing loss for the Packers tonight. We'll see if they can get better as the season goes along. But hey, it's put up or shut up time. Let's see if they can do it. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. You know, I saw me at TomGrossiComedy.com. A big shout out and thank you to all the Patreon and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.